The moment our hands touched, I realized certain doors within us open without a sound, and once opened, they cannot be closed again. It wasn't merely a mistake. It was a deliberate choice, one that carried the weight to shatter everything. My name is Slayer. I am 42 years old, and what unfolded between me and someone who had always been a part of my family still lingers in my mind to this very day. When my husband left once more on another extended trip, I believed the only feeling I would endure was loneliness. Never did I imagine I would feel noticed, or that I would cross a boundary I could never return from. Have you ever encountered a moment when you knew, even before it came to pass, that it would alter you forever? Share your thoughts. I am ready to hear your truth. I had never foreseen that my life would drift into such a silent shift. A 42-year-old woman, standing in the center of a picture-perfect home, yet the feeling of invisibility clung so sharply. My husband, who once was the axis of my world, had now become no more than a name scribbled on a travel itinerary. His business trips stretched endlessly, day into day, week after week, and his returns resembled acknowledgments rather than reunions. We still spoke, exchanging polite words about work, about expenses, about the weather. But between us, there was a distance too vast to close. The intimacy, the passing touches, the moments when a single glance could convey entire thoughts, those belonged to another lifetime. I kept the house spotless, tended the garden on the front porch so it bloomed with each season, carried a bright smile whenever I met the neighbors. Yet no one knew that behind the closed door each night, all that remained was a dim reflection of myself. When my husband mentioned that he would be away again, this time for nearly a month, I simply smiled and nodded. I did not question him, did not beg, did not resent. I had grown too accustomed to acceptance, or so I believed. There are cracks we assume will remain small, until one day they widen into something impossible to hide. And I stood at the edge of that widening abyss, unaware that even the faintest breeze could send me tumbling. A week after his departure, Liam returned. 23 years old, tall, calm, with a smile still carrying the faint light of innocence, though maturity had begun to shape his features, things I had never truly noticed before. I had cared for Liam since his middle school days. A gentle but defined bond, as though we lived under the same roof but each beneath our own separate sky. Yet this time, something had shifted. When Liam stepped inside, suitcase in hand, hair tousled by the spring wind, the house seemed to brighten just slightly. A warmth, a vibrant light, the kind of feeling I had forgotten. "Hello, Miss Claire," Liam greeted, his voice deeper, warmer than I recalled. "Hello, dear," I answered, smiling, trying to hide the sudden awkwardness that accompanied the realization of how much the boy had grown. We quickly fell back into old habits, cooking together, tidying up, watching old films at night. Simple things, yet enough to ease the emptiness. But within those small moments, I began to sense a change. Sometimes I noticed Liam's gaze linger longer than before. A passing brush of our hands while carrying dishes made my heart skip. A quiet compliment, "You look beautiful today," left me flustered enough to hide my smile behind a coffee cup. I told myself, "Don't read into this, Claire. It's only the mistake of a lonely woman." Yet I could not deny those tiny gestures, whether by accident or design, reached places within me long neglected. One late afternoon, bathed in golden sunset, Liam sat beside me on the porch steps. "You know," he said softly, "I've always admired how you keep everything steady, even when no one notices." I looked at him, and in his eyes I saw something altered. Not youthful admiration, but recognition, understanding, and a loneliness that mirrored my own, seeking someone who would see it. The walls I had built over so many years felt suddenly thin. I should have turned away. I should have broken the moment with a careless remark. But instead, I stayed, silent, allowing myself, for the first time in years, not to resist. The sun dipped lower, leaving a tender hush over the world. In that instant, I knew something had begun, quietly and irreversibly. That night, the rain came. It fell suddenly, a steady murmur across the roof, like the earth itself exhaling. I was cleaning the kitchen when the lights flickered before vanishing altogether. A power outage, right on the first rainy evening of the season. I searched through a drawer and found a handful of small candles. As I struggled to light them, Liam entered, carrying 2 glasses of red wine. "I thought you could use this," he said with a smile, his eyes warm in the dim glow. I accepted the glass, my fingers brushing his. A simple touch that in the candlelight became anything but simple. We settled in the living room, candles glowing upon the table, their golden reflections shining in Liam's eyes. The rain tapped against the windows, creating a melody for the silence stretching between us. I sipped my wine, steadying my breath, but inside me I could hear the frantic pounding of my heart. Then Liam spoke, his voice low and steady. "I know, I probably shouldn't say this." I turned to look at him, my fingers tightening around the stem of my glass. "But do you know," Liam continued, "you're the most beautiful woman I've ever known. Not only because of how you look, but because of how you exist. Strong, gentle, and yet so achingly fragile." His words echoed inside me. The heart I believed had gone barren for years suddenly ached as though it had been touched for the first time in forever. I tried to laugh, to dissolve the weight of the moment. I wanted to rise, to make an excuse and leave. But instead, my lips parted in a whisper, barely audible. "Thank you, Liam." The silence that followed swelled thick and full, not awkward, not fearful, but heavy with the weight of all that was left unsaid. Liam set his glass down, his eyes fixed on mine. And before reason could intervene, his hand reached toward me, steady and sure, finding mine. I didn't pull away. I let him. That single brush, just fingertips grazing, was enough to send a tremor rippling through me, as though the very axis of the universe had shifted. The rain kept falling, filling the quiet. Outside, the world carried on, unaware that within those walls something fragile, forbidden, and undeniable had begun. One accidental touch, and the line had been crossed. From there was no return. The next morning, the house was thick with an unfamiliar silence. I rose early. My footsteps hushed as I made my way to the kitchen, as though a single sound might shatter the fragile air left behind from the night before. Pale sunlight streamed through the windows, glinting against raindrops that still clung to the wooden floor. I brewed coffee slowly, my heart twisting with the memory of how Liam's eyes had searched mine last night. Not as a boy admiring someone from his past, but as a man desiring a woman in the present. Soft steps echoed behind me. I didn't have to turn to know it was him. "Did you sleep okay?" His voice carried the strain of a restless night. I nodded, lying to him, lying to myself. "Yeah, well enough." We sat across the dining table, steaming cups untouched between us. The silence was so thick it pressed against the skin, leaving every breath heavy. I tried steering the conversation to safer ground: his studies, his summer plans. He answered politely, yet his gaze lingered unchanged, burning with a quiet intensity that made me crave it in a way that terrified me. By afternoon, rain returned in sudden sheets. I stood by the window, watching droplets race down the glass, my mind caught in a restless storm of its own. Liam came close, standing just behind me. I could feel his warmth so close that a single lean backward would have brought us together. "Miss Claw," his whisper was soft, almost just a breath brushing my ear. "I've never seen anyone look so beautifully sad." I turned to deflect, ready with a joke, but when my eyes locked with his, the words dissolved. We were standing so close that I could feel my heartbeat echo against the thin space between us. I should have stepped away. I needed to. But instead, I closed my eyes and surrendered to the desperate hunger of being seen. Truly seen beyond the years of silence, beyond the role I had been confined to. His hand brushed mine, unspoken, tentative, and in that moment, 2 lonelinesses recognized each other. My answer came in a lean, closing the last fragile space between us. The moment was hesitant, filled with emotion, yet desperate, like we were trying to reclaim all the years of restraint, silence, and forgotten longing. For the first time in years, I no longer felt invisible. I was simply a woman, alive and remembered. We broke apart breathless, shaken by the weight of what had just unfolded. I staggered back, my voice trembling. "We shouldn't." The words cracked. Damn, how much I meant them! He only nodded, though those eyes never released mine. I knew then, no matter how fiercely I tried, the bond had already fastened, impossible to break. That evening, silence hung between us like a fragile thread. We avoided each other, careful, as though a single glance would be enough to unravel everything. I curled on the living room couch, a blanket wrapped loosely around my shoulders, while outside the rain drummed relentlessly, beating against the windows like an echo of the unease within me. Liam descended the stairs slowly, hesitant, and sat across from me. The distance between us was narrow enough to ache, wide enough to restrain. No words came. Only the rhythm of rain, the sigh of wind, and the erratic pounding of my heart filled the air. Finally, Liam broke the silence. His voice was rough, almost breaking. "I'm sorry. I should have had more control." I pulled the blanket tighter, my chest twisting. "No," I whispered, the confession slipping free before thought could stop it. "It wasn't just you." I couldn't place the blame on him alone. I couldn't pretend my hands were clean. His gaze held mine not with the recklessness of a boy, but with the gravity of a man fully owning what he had done. "I don't want you to feel guilty," he said, his fingers curling into fists against his knees. "But I can't pretend nothing happened. I can't return to how it was before." My teeth pressed into my lip as pain rose inside my chest. Deep down, I knew he was right. I couldn't either. I had crossed the line I once swore I would never even approach. Yet at the same time, for the first time in so many years, I had truly felt alive, no longer quietly existing beside a man who had long since stopped seeing me. I drew in a trembling breath, searching myself for some fragment of reason still left. "You'll be going back to school soon," I whispered. They'll go back to normal." Liam said nothing. He nodded, but his eyes betrayed him, carrying a sorrow so deep it pressed painfully against my chest. "Can we pretend nothing happened?" he asked softly, almost afraid of his own voice. I met his gaze and knew I could not lie. "No," I whispered back. "We can never go back. Not because of the kiss, not because of clumsy touches, but because we've seen each other in a place so deep no one else ever tried to reach." That night I did not sleep. I sat at the window, watching the endless rain, wondering where my life would drift once morning came. Liam didn't sleep either. I heard his quiet steps pacing the hallway, pausing outside my door. He didn't open it. He just stood there, like a silent apology, a wordless regret. I wrapped my arms around myself as tears streamed hot down my cheeks, unstoppable. Tomorrow was a mystery. All I knew was that the piece of who we once were was gone, and neither of us could ever turn back. By morning, the house carried a silence I had never heard before. The rain was gone, leaving streaks of water clinging to the windows beneath a dull gray sky. I followed habit, preparing coffee, though the warmth in the cup did nothing to ease the cold gripping my chest. Liam had risen early. He was already seated on the porch steps, suitcase by his side. Through the window, I saw him, and my heart tightened like a fist. There were no goodbyes gentle enough for partings such as these, no words that could erase what had been done. When I stepped outside, Liam lifted his head. "I should go," he said, his voice catching in his throat. I nodded, unable to trust my voice. "I know things will be harder after today," he added, each word carving itself into the heavy air. "But I'll never forget what it felt like to truly see you." I bit my lip, swallowing back the tears threatening to spill. "Thank you," I whispered, "for reminding me I'm still someone who can feel." We stood in the small yard, weak sunlight fading across us, our gazes locked. No vows, no promises, only silence. We both knew that some of the most beautiful things are those that can never be spoken aloud. When the taxi carried Liam past the trees and out of sight, I turned back toward the house, feeling as though part of me had gone with him. All that remained were the empty rooms and the memory of someone who had made me remember I was still capable of love, even if only for a fleeting moment. 2 days later, my husband returned. He stepped inside with a souvenir bag in hand and a weary smile. "I got you chocolates at the airport," he said, setting the bag on the table. I smiled out of habit, watching as he busied himself with luggage, phone, schedule. He didn't notice the shift in my eyes. He didn't see that something inside me had changed. He didn't realize my heart had stopped waiting for him long before his trips ever began. That evening, we ate dinner together, just as before. Silent, polite, empty. In that silence, I understood my life would continue, but it would never again be the same. I had touched something no one could erase. The feeling of being seen, of being alive, of knowing I still existed beyond the role of wife and shadow. Even if loneliness remained my companion, I would not forget. I would not forget Liam. I would not forget myself. I would not forget that once my heart had awakened, even if its cost was to live with memory alone. The day Liam truly left wasn't the morning he stepped off the porch. It was when his final message lit up my phone. "Please take care of yourself. Don't forget you are worthy of love." I read those words over and over, hands trembling, heart aching with emotions I could never put into sound. I knew we couldn't continue. That bond, fragile, fierce, forbidden, could only survive in silence and regret. I sat in the living room, a wide, elegant, hollow space. My husband was already planning his next trip. He still didn't see the shift in me, didn't notice the fracture I worked so hard to hide. My fingers tapped absently on the table as my gaze fell toward the porch garden, flowers wilting under the late sun. The ache of loss needed no witness. It ate silently, piece by piece, breath by breath. And the cruelest part, I couldn't blame anyone. Not Liam, not my husband, not time, nor loneliness, nor absence. I could only blame myself for letting hope slip through. Perhaps what Liam and I shared was always meant to be only a moment of being lost, a fragile flicker of light in a long, starless night. Something beautiful, but without a place in this reality. That night, in the mirror's reflection, I stared deep into my own eyes. I had lost something, the innocence, the safety of illusion, but I had also reclaimed something I had buried long ago. A woman who still knew how to yearn, how to ache, how to feel alive. No more Liam, no more lingering touches, no more eyes that pierced through me like no one else ever had. Only me, meeting myself, alone. And this time, I was not afraid. Because even though my heart bore its cracks, I knew I could never again fade quietly into this house. I had awakened, and no one, not even myself, could take that from me. The worst pain, I realized, isn't losing someone you love. It is losing yourself inside someone else's forgetting. Liam was gone, but what he left behind was an awakening. I no longer lived simply to exist. I would learn to fill the silence with my own courage. And this time, I would never let loneliness erase me again. If you've ever felt that kind of awakening when someone, even if only passing through, changed the way you saw yourself, please share it with me. Do you believe those who cannot stay are sometimes the ones who transform us most? I would truly love to hear your story, your thoughts, or even just a fleeting memory. Because sometimes, the smallest shares reach the deepest parts of the soul.